In this Diablo 4 video, I'm going to be showing you my Vampire build. This is a level 50 plus version of our Bloodburst Necromancer build that we showed you a little bit earlier this week. This is aimed at World Tiers 3, clearing Nightmare dungeons and Helltides and things like that. And in this video, we'll show you how that build is evolved and how you can play it at higher levels of the game. The way this build works is that you're going to make use of Overpower Damage from two major sources. You still have Blood Surge from the original build, but now you also have Rathma's Vigor. What Blood Surge continues to do is obliterate everything on the screen due to the Paranormal Blood Surge upgrade. The idea is to keep using this core skill to stack 5 overwhelming bloods. On the 6th Blood Surge, you end up dealing considerable overpower damage, so you'll be able to kill every enemy quickly. Meanwhile, Rathma's Vigor also triggers overpower as long as you remain healthy, a staple of this build. When you reach level 50, you'll notice that applying the same set of skills from the Bloodburst build will no longer be possible since you remain 2 essence starved most of the time. To remedy this problem, you'll need to let go of Bone Spear and substitute it for Corpse Explosion and Bone Prism. In fact, both of them will let you generate essence and deal greater damage to enemies due to the applied vulnerable effect. For elites and bosses, you're going to trigger Bone Prism with the Bone Storm ultimate skill. Bone Storm lets you conjure a huge storm of bones to deal damage over time, while reducing the damage you take and improving your critical strike chance. Next, let's take a look at the skills for this build and see how they've changed from the previous build. Despite the nerf to Corpse Explosion after the beta, it's still a highly relevant skill for a lot of Necromancer builds. Rather than consuming essence, Corpse Explosion generates it based off one of the passives that we use. You'll be able to utilize the numerous corpses available at your disposal to deal massive damage. As such, you're going to want to invest all 5 points into the Corpse Explosion skill and unlock Enhanced Corpse Explosion and Plagued Corpse Explosion. Doing so will widen its AoE and allow you to inflict even more damage against vulnerable targets. And thanks to the Grim Harvest passive, which I just mentioned, you're able to consistently generate essence every time a corpse is detonated. Meanwhile, the Hewed Flesh passive will make it so that there's a chance to spawn even more corpses when you get a lucky hit. Next, we come to Bone Prism, which is a Macabre skill that has a cooldown. This lets you trap enemies inside in order to apply the Vulnerable status effect while gaining a lot of essence at the same time. You basically regenerate 15 essence by default and then 5 more based on the number of targets you've entrapped. Bone Prism is an amazing skill to significantly boost your damage, and once you've destroyed the enemies inside, you'll also have a lot more corpses to trigger Corpse Explosion. Next is Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden is a good curse skill to have for this build, mainly because it doesn't cost essence, but in fact it actually lets you generate this resource when you've also upgraded it with the Enhanced Iron Maiden upgrade. When you gain access to the Abhorrent Iron Maiden upgrade, you heal for 5% of your max life when a cursed enemy dies. This synergizes with the aspect of untimely death, allowing you to essentially heal beyond your maximum life or overheal, which then grants a considerable overpower damage bonus. You can get this legendary aspect from legendary items that have it. And finally, Iron Maiden works well with the maxed out Amplify Damage and Death's Embrace passives due to the extra damage you deal against cursed and close targets. Next is Blood Surge. Blood Surge will still be the main core skill of this build. This will be your major source of damage while keeping you healthy because of its life leeching mechanic. Be sure to invest 5 points here and unlock Enhanced Blood Surge and Paranormal Blood Surge. This is made all the more effective when you maximize the Unliving Energy and Imperfectly Balanced passives because of the increased essence and damage. Furthermore, the blood-bathed aspect continues to be very effective due to the extra damage you deal from the second Nova explosion. Remember to complete the Horfos Demise dungeon in Fractured Peaks to get this. Additionally, another good aspect here is the aspect of Rathma's Chosen from legendary items. So every time Blood Surge overpowers, you gain an attack speed boost. Meanwhile, the blood passives will help build the strength of your character. These are comprised of Gruesome Mending, Coalesce Blood, and Tides of Blood. You'll only need to apply 1 point in Gruesome Mending in order to gain access to the other 2 passives. You then have Coalesce Blood and Tides of Blood, letting you sufficiently amplify your blood surge and overpower damage, provided that you remain healthy, which is over 80% of your health, which is not too difficult to do with this build. For your key passive, you're going to choose Rathma's Vigor. What this does is it increases your max life, but also boosts your overpower damage because that's also based off your max life. But it also provides you with an automatic overpower attack after being healthy for 15 seconds, so you're going to gain periodic overpower attacks from having this. When it comes to the Book of the Dead, you'll sacrifice all of your minions to considerably enhance your overall resilience and overpower damage. For the Skeletal Warriors, you'll select the 3rd node of the Defender to raise your elemental resistances, which will come in handy against the majority of enemies in World Tier 3. For Skeletal Mages, you'll pick the 3rd node of the Bone Form to significantly boost your overpower damage by 60%. And for Golem, you'll choose the 3rd node of Blood to further increase your maximum life. Because you're now a lone vampire, you'll want to get and allocate 3 points each to the Standalone and Momentum Mori passives. Not only will you be tankier, but you'll also receive greater bonuses from sacrificing your Skeletal Warriors and Mages, making it win-win. The best aspect to get here is the sacrificial aspect, which can be obtained from the ruins of Eridu dungeon and Hawazar. This further boosts your sacrificial bonuses to make the Vampire Necromancer build really potent. When it comes to your ultimate skill, you're going to drop Blood Wave from the previous build and instead go for Bone Storm due to the bigger damage it provides even if you don't have a summoned golem. With its Prime Bone Storm and Supreme Bone Storm upgrades, you'll receive much less damage and land crits more often to be able to destroy tougher enemies or bosses faster. And then finally there's Reap, which substitutes Hemorrhage since you're already tanky enough. Reap is simply there for when you run out of other skills to trigger and when you need to create corpses for resource generation. It'll also boost your attack speed after killing an enemy, which is a nice bonus. Next, let's take a look at the gear that you should use for this build, starting with your weapon. And for weapon, I highly recommend using a two-handed weapon simply because of the aspect's power you'll end up using here, which will be boosted by 100%, and that is a game changer. The bonuses you want to look for on this weapon are Overpower Damage, Vulnerable Damage, Critical Strike Damage, and damage to close enemies. The best aspect you should slot here is the Sacrificial aspect to make the most out of the bonuses you get from sacrificing your minions. For the gem, you should pick Ruby to further boost your Overpower Damage from Blood Surge. For armor, you want to look for bonuses like Willpower to improve your essence generation and Overpower Damage, Intelligence for greater skill damage, Dexterity for enhanced critical strike chance and dodge chance, Maximum Life, Ranks of Blood Surge, Damage reduction from close enemies, Essence cost reduction, and movement speed. Additionally, you want to slot rubies into your armor for maximum life. For your armor, there are two aspects you'll minimally want, Aspect of the Protector and Aspect of Untimely Death. I've already talked a bit about Aspect of Untimely Death, but the other one, Aspect of the Protector, you should be familiar with at this point. This is the one that conjures a barrier when you attack an elite or a boss. This barrier is extremely helpful at keeping your health above healthy status or above 80%, which provides you a lot of bonuses. When it comes to your jewelry, you want to look for bonuses that provide Overpower Damage, Critical Strike Damage, Damage to close enemies, Damage reduction, Total armor, Maximum life, and all stats. A great ring for this build is the Mother's Embrace Unique Ring, which you get from completing the campaign. This will help refund a portion of your essence as long as Blood Surge hits 5+ enemies, which is most likely to happen in the later parts of the game. You should then slot any gems that will grant additional elemental resistances. Lastly, be sure to imprint the Blood-Bathed aspect on your amulet to make its successful Nova explosions a little bit more potent. Next, we move to the Paragon board for this build, and what you want to focus on while you're leveling from 50 to 70 is the Willpower attribute to acquire the 40% damage boost from the Prime and Knowledge rare nodes. On the other hand, investing in Dexterity will allow you to gain benefits of the Preservation rare node, providing you with a huge bump in armor and some intelligence bonuses for better skill damage. In terms of Paragon glyphs, the best one is the Corporeal glyph, for the increased armor, physical damage, and damage reduction, especially since you no longer have minions to cushion some incoming attacks. Be sure to invest in 40+ intelligence nodes to access the additional physical damage bonus. When you get to higher levels, you eventually choose the specialized Necromancer Paragon board for this build, and here you'll select the Bloodbath one to amplify your Overpower damage by 50%. Final tips. For the general skill rotation, you'll be running around in an area first to draw a bunch of enemies to you, before triggering Iron Maiden and then spamming Blood Surge for most damage. This is due to the extremely high damage you'll deal thanks to Rothma's Vigor. Against the second set of enemies, you'll execute the same combination, but you'll add in Corpse Explosion to finish them off. Doing so will prevent you from using way too much of your essence again and again. When it comes to additional legendary aspects, the good ones to keep a lookout for are Aspect of the Embalmer, Torturous Aspect, and Eluding Aspect. Aspect of the Embalmer lets you spawn a Blood Orb when you use Corpse Explosion, thereby providing you with extra healing. Torturous Aspect makes it so that cursed enemies can possibly be stunned after dealing direct damage. Lastly, the Eluding Aspect grants Unstoppable, meaning that any crowd control effect that you may have had on you before becoming injured gets removed and you gain immunity to them. This will help you traverse areas better and can save you in some deadly situations. So that wraps up our Necromancer Vampire build. I hope that showed you guys how you can play a blood-focused Necromancer build towards endgame and kind of get you on the right path heading towards 70 and World Tier 4. If you guys have more questions about this build, let me know in the comments below. We still have more builds coming, so stay tuned for those.